Hello everyone, welcome to 3DDesignAcademy.com and the 9th Q&A session. In this segment, I will attempt to solve various problems or questions that you guys might have in Alias. If you have a question or an area that's not working out, please feel free to send the model to contact@3DDesignAcademy.com. Now in this particular segment, a viewer asked me about building the body side of the Maserati MC20. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is the particular car in question. So let's go over some of the photos. So you'll see that there's a wheel flat over here, the body side. There's a little bit of departure between this surface and this surface. So what I'm going to concentrate on is essentially the body side, some of the body side over here and the rear fender over here. And I'm going to also show you guys how to do this intake portion. This is going to be a little bit difficult. Let's go ahead and get started. Now I do have those vehicle set up like this. Now do mind that, this is the actual vehicle size, but of course the canvas is a perspective image. So it's going to be close, but it's not going to be exact per, especially the height over here. The wheel flat is already set up, so I'm not taking too much time with that. So let's go ahead and actually build some curves. So I'm just going to go ahead with the edit point curve. I'm just going to make a degree 2, and I'm just going to strike a curve over here and over here, but for the main body side like this. Now for the curves, I think because there is a little of the body side is a little bit offset from the wheel flat. If you see this, that there's a little bit of section, you'll see that it's a little bit inboard. So I'm going to try and replicate that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a little bit of crown like this because I'm pretty sure it's got some crown. I'm just going to push it inboard like that. Now I do need to make a curve. You can probably just use these, but I think it's probably better if I just create a curve for this. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to grab this surface over here and let's actually snap a curve. This is the main surface that I used to create the body, the wheel flat with. So I'm just going to use those. So I'm just going to snap a curve like this just so that I can mimic it. So I'm just going to project over here and I'm going to project over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, let's actually grab those. And I'm just going to do a fit curve over here like this. And I'm just going to make it degree 2. Do the same thing over here. And let's go ahead and hide these. I'm just going to delete these curves because I don't need them anymore. And let's go ahead and delete the construction history over here as well. Just going to snap a curve, snap the curve to this area, and I'm going to snap it over here as well. Because the wheel flat, original wheel flat surface that I used to create these with were the same, I think I should be able to do a rail, but just in case, let's do a bi-rail like this. So you can either do 1 or 2 or 2 and 1, doesn't really matter. It should be pretty similar, and I'm going to just do something like that. Now it is a little bit higher over here, so maybe I should do that. So let's do this. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the stretch tool. Now, it's probably advisable that you do this, you match it on the first try. But since I'm doing this, I'm just going to extend it over here, and I'm going to extend this one over here. And let's see if that's good. Now, if you see the side section over here, you'll see that there's a strong core running through like this, and you have a surface that's sort of going up, and you have a shoulder over here. So I'm going to do all of those, but I think I'm going to just bring these down just a little bit more like that. I think that should be pretty good. Okay. So that's that. Now that's done, I'm just going to go ahead and re-snap these curves over here and do the same thing on the rear. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to snap this point, and I'm just going to snap it like that. Now you'll see that in this picture, it actually fans out a little bit over here in the front. So I'm going to do that too. So I'm just going to, let's go ahead and grab a curve over here. I would say this is probably good. Now I'm not going to do the front as much. It's just going to be a little, so I'm just going to block something in, but mostly I'm going to be concentrating on the rear. Now, as far as this section goes, let's actually strike some curves for the lower over here so that at least I can get some shape. So I'm just going to strike some curves like this, give it a little bit of crown over here. I'm just going to push that out, rotate it a little bit like that. I think that matches pretty well. I'm just going to bring this down over here, and I'm going to bring that down like that. Okay. Now I'm probably not going to give a lot of detail on this one, but let's trim it out like this. Let's push the curve over here, and I'll probably do something over here as well. Let's snap a curve like this. I think it needs to move a little bit more rearward like that. And let's use the stretch tool. Give it a little bit of crown like this, and I think that's good. And what I'm going to do is, let's go to a perspective view. I'm just going to snap it over here, and I think that's good. All right, so let's start with the front. So I'm just going to project something over here. Actually, let's push it down all the way through like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, well, because there is a little bit departure over here. Actually, you know what? I think it might be better if I push this in because that's what it looks like. So you know what? I'm just going to make this out of rail. So let's do this. I'm actually going to do a fit curve over here. So this is going to stay where it is. I'm actually going to delete this one because I don't think I need that anymore. And I'm just going to push this in, and it's just going to be a single rail because I believe that this is pretty similar. Yep. So let's just do that. So I'm just going to grab this one. Actually, looks like it actually has a little decent bit of crown. So I'm just going to push in it like that. And let's use the stretch tool to push that in a little bit. And I'm just going to use a rail. It's going to be 1 and 1 like that. And for this one, I'm just going to say bi rail. It's going to be 1 and 2. And I'm just going to snap it like that. Looks like rebuild is required. So I'm just going to say explicit control. I'm going to say degree 5 for now. Gen is going to be degree 2, and I probably need a little bit of crown. Doesn't really, I'm not sure which way. I would say probably positive is the way to go. I'm not quite sure. Actually, you know what? For these ones, I think, well, let's just make it a little bit positive like that. Okay, so that's good. And now I'm just going to align this one because the position is failing. So I'm just going to grab the surface over here. It's going to be partial. Yep, that works. Let's see if I can reduce it. Position influence set to max. Yep, that works too. Looks like 4 is the limit. I'm just going to do a blending over here, and that's it. Okay, so now that creates a nice space between these two, so I think that's going to work. Although I'm not quite sure if it requires that much space, but depending on the view, actually, you know what? Let's bring the rear view. Oh, actually, there is quite a lot of space, so I think that's good over there. All right, so let's go back to Alias over here, and I'm just going to do a little bit of trimming. So let's do that. So I'm just going to, well, actually, you know what? Let's do this. I am going to extend this a little bit, and I'm going to make sure all of these are on the same plane. So I'm just going to say invisible for now for those, and I'm just going to grab everything by the CV, actually including these ones. And I'm just going to align it like this so that everything's lined up like that. Now to trim these, you can say Core G2, you can use a curve fillet. And I'm just going to maybe make it a little bit bigger, maybe something like 50 over here. And this one I would say probably 100, if not more, maybe 120. Well, actually, you know what? I think I can go back to 100. Right. Also, curve fillet does have a trim function. So if you just do automatic, it's going to trim off the excess curves, kind of like surface fillet. So I'm just going to project over here like this, and that's done. I'm going to trim here, I'm going to trim here, and I would say that looks pretty good. And yeah. So I'm just going to leave that there, and I'm just going to continue with the rear. That's as much as I'm going to do on the front. And now let's go ahead and do this section over here. So for this one, I think I'm just going to make it nice and straight. So I'm just going to snap a curve like this, and I'm just going to project over here. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to connect the curve from here, whoops, here, and I think it's sloping down. Now it's kind of hard to see in this canvas image, which is the transparency is a little bit low, but I do think that this is dipping down a little bit over here. So I'm just going to do the same thing, maybe something like that. I think that should be good. And yeah, give it a little bit of crown like that maybe. I think that's good. And I'm going to do a rail over here. Now this one, I can just extend it a little bit like this, and I will say trim. Actually, I should probably trim this one too. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to project this curve, this curve, this curve, and this curve over here like that. And I'm not going to trim it yet because I do need a surface over here. So for this one, I would say bi-rail should be good. I'm going to say 1 and 2 like this. And it creates a nice slab surface over here. Okay, so that's good. Let's just check the highlights. Highlights not bad. I'm not going to go too much into detail about how this is supposed to flow and all that because, to be honest, I don't have a lot of references. I would say this looks fine. So yeah, I think the direction is pretty good. So let's go ahead and continue. Okay, so now that's done. Here's what I'm going to do. First of all, let's go ahead and project this one over here. And this one over here, I would say just connect the ends like that. And I'm going to trim both off. Let's go ahead and trim this one over here, and I'm going to trim that one. Okay, so that's good. And I do need a surface over here. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, basically, this is the surface that represents this section over here. So let's go ahead and grab a curve. Now, unfortunately, I do not have a top view, so I'm just going to approximate it. Now, it does look like it's got a lot of volume. Let's see. Yeah, especially in this picture over here. So I'm going to give it a lot of volume as well, like that. And let's use the stretch tool to just bring it in a little bit like this, maybe a little bit more. So I'm just going to go to a front view like that. And let's give it some volume like that. And I think that's good. All right. So now what I'm going to do is just build a rail. So it's just going to be 1-on-1, rail over here, rail over here, and rail over here like this. Actually, this I believe, oh, okay. So this is actually not needed because there's a rear fender over here. So I'm just going to strike a curve for that as well. So I'm just going to strike a degree to curve, and I think it's supposed to end over here. If you look at the side image, let's just zoom in over here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to approximate it like this, and I think, well, I'm just going to lean it a little bit rearward. I think that should be good. All right. And now let's look at it from the top view. Now it could be straight, but I'm sure there's got to be some crown like this. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of crown like that. And I'm just going to use a freeform blend. It's going to position on both sides to connect these two. Now let's try default. I think that location is good. I'm going to turn modify parameter off, and I'm going to turn on modify range on. Now this side does have to be connect ends, so I'm just going to snap it over here, and I'm going to snap it over here so that I can just use a square to block this in. Okay, and there should probably a little bit of crown, so let's give it a little bit of crown as well. So I'm just going to maybe something like that. I don't think it has to be much, but there should at least be something. So let's go ahead and do a square over here. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I think there's a little bit too much discrepancy over here. So let's see if I can play around with it a little bit. So right now, if I were to, I think there might be a little bit too much crown. So let's give this a crown, a little bit of crown over here as well. 0.3. I think that's not too bad. Although I'm not quite a fan of this highlight over here, but well, maybe that's just how it is. Seems to be a lot of volume over here as well, especially if you look at this one. So I think I should do the same thing over here, give it some volume. So maybe a little bit more wouldn't hurt. And that should probably help with the crown, with the highlight over here as well. I think that's starting to look better. So let's see if I can give it a little bit more. I would say I don't think I want to give it more than that because it's starting to become really full. Well, there's a lot of volume here. So yeah, I would say that's pretty good. Okay, so now that's done, I also need to create the shoulder over here. So let's go ahead and do that. Actually, I'm going to reduce the crown on this a little bit because I think it might be a little bit too much. So I'm just going to do NUV over here. I'm just going to reduce it just a little bit. I would say that's a little bit better. I think that's good. All right, so now that's done. Let's go ahead and create the shoulder. So I'm just going to strike a curve over here. I'm just going to bring up like this. Notice that there is a little bit of fleck, so you just want to end a little bit below. And I'm just going to, of course, use the stretch tool to bring it inboard like this. And if you go to the rear view, you'll see that it's actually quite flat. So just take a note of that. So let's go back to Alias, and I'm just going to give it a nice wide shoulder. Although this does need a little bit of crown, so let's go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to strike a rail here and here. Now these areas I'm not going to do. Everything is going to be more concentrated towards the rear. Okay, so I think that's not too bad. Let's just check the volume from the rear view. I think there probably needs to be a little bit more volume there. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to bring the curve up like this, bring the CV up. Actually, you know what? I think I'm just going to do NUV to build some volume there. I think that's pretty good. Not too bad. All right. Now, if you notice, you'll see that there, if you were to fill in the hole, there is a surface that connects from here all the way to the back. So I'm going to be doing the same thing. So I'm just going to copy and paste this one over here. Now, unfortunately, I do not have a reference for this one. So I'm just going to eyeball it. So I think it's probably coming in about like third way in the body. So let's just give that a go. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a bi-rail since we already have a surface there. From here, here, and here like this. Let's turn rebuild off. And I think that should be good. Now, since the position is somewhat referenced over here, I am going to turn symmetry on just so that I can play around with the size. So I would say something like that should be good. And let's just pull it a little bit more rearward because, well, it does have a little bit of plan view here. So I think that's good. And let's just take a look at from the side view. Of course, you'll realize that it's a little bit too puffy. So I'm just going to bring it down like that. And I'm just going to bring this one down over here as well. Actually, I'm going to do a little bit of slide over here. And let's just, oh, maybe a little bit more. I think that's not too bad. I think I'm just, well, the CV structure, I don't like how it's a little bit below the other one, but I think it might be needed. So let's just match it, and I would say that's good enough. Okay, so I have a surface, setup surface like this. So now it's time for fillets. So since this is pretty much all straight, I'm just going to fillet it. So I'm just going to grab a curve like that. Actually, let's turn symmetry off. And I'm just going to copy and paste, somewhat equal spacing over here. I would say that's not too bad, maybe a little bit wider, just so that I have a nice transition over here. And let's go ahead and project. So I'm going to project here, and I'm going to project here. I'm just going to trim these, and I'm going to trim these over here. Now it looks like, I don't know why the history is failing, but that's okay. Oh, let's see what's going on. I wonder if it has anything to do with trim, but the surface itself is good. So I'm just going to delete the construction history there. So let's just delete the construction history on all of these over here. And I'm going to trim this one over here as well. And I'm just going to use a freeform blend. It's going to be G2 on both sides. Edge align, I think that should be good. And I'm just going to do the same thing over here. And let's do, it's got a couple of spans, so I'm just going to do explicit control like that, and that's good. And use a square to finish it off. So it's just going to be 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1 and 3 is going to be curvature. It's got a lot of spans too, so let's do an explicit control. 5 and 5, and that takes care of it. Now, you might be wondering, what are we going to do about this one over here? So here is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to fill it in. I'm just going to use a fillet. So I'm just going to grab a curve like this. Now, this one, you probably want to make it quite big because it does require a smooth transition. So I'm just going to do this, make it somewhat big like that. Just project it from the side. Let's go ahead and delete the curves like this. I'm going to trim here. I'm just going to use a freeform blend like that. It's going to be edge align. Now you can do edge align over here. You can do connect ends. I don't think it really matters. And I'm just going to leave it like that. And that creates actually a pretty decent highlight while it's smooth. Now I'm not a big fan of the direction, but at least the transition is smooth. So I'll take that. Okay, so now what, let's see, what do I need to do next? Okay, so I think I'm going to do this. If you look at this photo over here, you'll see that there is a highlight or fillet that's running all the way through. So I'm going to put that in. So let's grab a surface fillet over here. And I'm just going to say it's going to be chord, it's going to be G2. Let's start with 50. I'm going to just do a form factor of 1 and let's just put that in. Now, if you look at this size over here, I think it does need to be quite a lot bigger. So let's increase the size. So I'm going to try 100. I would say 100 is not too bad. I think I can do a little bit bigger. So maybe let's go 150. I think, well, is that too big? I actually think that's, well, maybe it's a little bit too big. Okay, so let's go back to maybe compromise at 120 and let's call it done. Yeah, I think that's not too bad. All right. Now, one thing is, I think it's actually spreading apart as it goes towards the rear. Now, I am going to try 120, but let's take a look. Actually, that's not too bad. A little bit harsh transition towards the bottom. I probably want to make it a little bit bigger, so maybe I'll try that. Okay, so I'm just going to undo over here. Okay, so actually that's why. So here's what I'm going to do. Instead of doing it this way, I think I'm just going to use a tubular offset. So now this one does require a little bit manual build, but I think it might be worth it. So let's do that. And I'm just going to trim over here, and I'm just going to connect the two using freeform blend. And now you'll see that there's a little zigzag. You can take care of it by pressing Bezier surface, and that's going to make it a little bit better. Now that's it. However, I think a form factor might be better for this one. Just a little bit different CV structure. If you look at it this way, form factor, I think that's a little bit better over here as well. Okay, now the only problem is you have to do this for, well, you basically, you know what? Let's do this. I think this is going to take too much time, so I'm just going to skip a step. I'm just going to do a surface fillet like this. Even if the CV structure is a little bit off, I think I'm just going to let that be. So let's do that. Okay, this is where I am going to click this one over here as well. It's creating a little bit harsh transition towards the bottom, but I think that's okay. All right, that said, however, you'll see that this is actually rising over here. That is actually necessary because the intersection is actually going like this. Now, the only problem is right now it's stopping somewhere over here. So this is going to require a little bit of manual build. So let's do that. Now, this one I'm not going to touch. Let's see, actually, explicit control. No, not explicit control. I'm going to try Bezier. See if that takes care of, well, yes and no. Well, if that's the case, you know what? I'm just going to leave it because I do need a fillet over here as well. So I prefer to keep it, except for this one. So okay, so let's just go Bezier. Okay, so Bezier surface over here. I think this one does require a manual build. So let's go over here. Now I'm going to keep the theoretical as is, as long as the surface is good. Okay, I think it is. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do a insert. Actually, you know what? Not an insert, but I'm just going to turn merge off, and I'm just going to do this over. Oh, not that one. Actually, is that the right one? Oh, okay, I think so. All right, so I'm just going to create a surface like this, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a blend curve between this one. Oops. I'm going to do a blend curve between this one and this one like that. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now this one is just going to fade. Well, so I guess you don't really need it. But what I do need is this one to have a nice CV structure. So let's take a look. I'm just going to make sure that it's nicely aligned. Of course, it's doing that. So let's go ahead and extend this one a little bit more. See if that creates a little bit more balanced fillet. Actually, you know what? I think it actually needs to go down. Yeah, that's good. All right, so let's just to make sure that it's somewhat similar to this CV structure over here. So I'm just going to shift it down. Okay, so that's pretty close. I would say that's a winner. Okay, so I'm just going to copy and paste this one. I'm just going to snap it over here because, well, the bottom, it's not really necessary. I just need something somewhat similar. Okay, so now that's done. Let's go ahead and make sure that this is where it needs to be. And actually, you know what? Let's do this. I'm just going to trim that off. Like that. And I'm going to grab this one, align it. I'm going to say G2, blending turned off. I'm going to align this one as well. Okay, CV structure, I would say close enough. And let's go ahead and fill that in. Okay, project this one. I'm going to say trim. Over here. Looks like this one is not trimmed yet. I'm going to trim over here. And now I'm going to use this to create a fillet. But before I do that, I do need an edge over here. So I'm just going to do a freeform blend, and I'm going to say default. Actually, you know what? Let's do connect ends, and I'm just going to bring in, I'm going to give it a little bit more angle like that. And now the only thing I need is this edge over here. Form factor should create a similar CV structure, as you can see over here. So let's go ahead and just duplicate this one, and I'm going to get rid of this one like that. And now use a square. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like this, curvature on both sides. And I'm just going to make sure that that's curvature. Looks like that fails it, but let's, if that's okay, so let's just make it tangent. Check the surface continue. Okay, so it's a little bit off. So let's find out by how much. I'm not going to spend too much time because there's still a lot of things to cover. So I think I'm just going to skip this step. All right, so I'm just going to get rid of the curves like that. Actually, you know what? Just in case I need it, I'm just going to hide it over here. And let's fill this in with a square. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. I would say 2 also needs to be curvature. And actually, everything fits. So that's good. All right, so nice transition over here. Highlight looks pretty good, and I'm pretty happy with that. So that one's gone, and I'm just going to delete the construction history over here. It's got a little flick, but overall it's not too bad. I think it's actually looking pretty clean. Okay, so now let's go ahead and handle this side. Now you'll see that this actually is starting from big, small, and I think it's basically going back to big. So let's put that in. It's going to be a little bit of variable fillet. So I'm just going to grab surface fillet again. I'm just going to start a little bit smaller. I'm just going to grab all of these over here, maybe this one too. And let's just run a fillet like this. Okay, I'm going to say edge align, auto edge align also. And for this one, let's just turn the Bezier surface off, just so that I can get a single span. Well, not a single span, but just one piece over here. Now, if you look at this one, like I said, it's let's go back to this one. It's a large, small, large. So I'm going to just put variable fillet over here, and I'm going to have a manipulator here, and I'm going to have one over here. So I would say this one probably 30. Let's take a look. Yeah, I think that's actually not too bad. Although I think the rear one needs to be a little bit bigger. So let's do query history, and let's make it a little bit bigger, 70. And let's take a look. I would say it probably needs to transition a little bit over here. So I think I'm going to make it 50 over here so that it's widens up a little bit as it goes towards center section. I would say that's a little bit better. Maybe it's a little bit too tight. Maybe I need to move it a little bit forward like that. Let's take a look. I would say that's not too bad. I still think that it should be a little bit wider as it goes towards here. So I think let's do query to history. I'm going to move this around here. That's a little bit better. Yeah, I think that's good. All right, so it's got a couple of spans, but it's not horrible. So I think I'm just going to leave it. Maybe I'll make a little bit of modification over here. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Okay, so let's do this. I'm just going to, well, first of all, let's see if Bezier, actually, let's see if I can just push it right here. And let's see if that does anything. Well, that gets rid of some of the spans over here. So if that's the case, I'm just going to leave it. I still have a lot of details to do over here, so I think I'll settle at that. Okay, so I'm just going to, well, actually, let's try Bezier and see if that cleans it up even more. Yes and no. I would say just leave it just so that it's just one piece instead of having several chunks. Now, if this was a regular tutorial, I will probably just clean up these two, but since I am a little bit pushed for time, I think I'm just going to skip those. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually work on this intake shape. So here's what I'm going to do. Now, I am going to, first of all, basically get this back to theoretical. So I'm just going to untrim it like this. And you'll see that this actually has a little negative shape like that. So I'm going to be putting that. Although I think this one is a little bit higher than where it needed to be. So I'm going to shift it, everything a little bit above. So I'm just going to grab a curve over here and I'm just going to snap it like this. And I'm just going to, now notice that it's a little bit off, but that's okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snap a curve here like this, and let's just try to do the top over here. So I think it's something like that. Give it a little bit of crown like this. I think I should probably just push it a little bit here. Make it a little bit thinner. Actually, you know what? This one, let's offset this. So I'm just going to offset it over here like this. I would say, yeah, that's pretty good. And let's just extend it back. Extend this one back. Just going to do it over here. Give it a little bit of crown. I think that's good. Okay, and now let's just go ahead and project. And for these ones, I'm going to do this too. So I'm just going to grab all these CVs. Like that. And let's just go to the side view. I'm just going to make sure that they're all level, including this one. So that when I put a curve fillet, it's not too bad. Okay, curve fillet over here. That one's pretty big, so I would say 100 is not bad. This one is a little bit smaller, so I'll just go half, something like that. And I think that's good. And I'm just going to go ahead and project. Pick these. Just going to trim it like that. And that's done. Okay, so I do need to project from the side too. So let's go ahead and do that as well. If you see this, let's just go to a side view. You'll see that there's a nice line transitioning from here. So I'm just going to untrim that piece. And I'm just going to grab this one over here. And I'm just going to say duplicate. And I'm just going to align this curve over here to this one over here like that. And I'm just going to make sure that it's right at the border. So looks like yeah, that looks like that snapped. Although I think that these ones need a little shift over here. And that's good. And now let's trim those. Now, do notice that it's actually on the filler itself. So I'm just going to grab all of these over here. And I'm just going to grab this one, snap it here. I'm just going to project. So I'm just going to grab all of these surfaces over here like that. And let's just project like that. Except for that one. So I'm going to trim this one, I'm going to trim this, I'm going to trim this one over here, but it doesn't need a transition from here to here. So let's go ahead and do that too. So for this one, I think I'm just going to do a blend curve, somewhat equidistant from here, like this. And I'm just going to make sure that's nice. Like that. CV structure doesn't look too bad. And let's go ahead and project. And I'm just going to make sure that this is nicely cut. So let's grab the COS like that. And that's good. All right. Okay, so the only thing I have now is this transition over here. So I think it's starting to go down probably at this point over here. So I'm going to just hide this one over here. And I'll probably just extend this just a little bit. So I'm going to say on trim. And actually, if you look at this one, let's make the canvas full brightness. I think it's starting to, oh, actually it's starting to dive down somewhere over here. So I'm just going to use an insert and just snap it somewhere here like that. And I'm just going to grab a curve and let's just make a surface go down like this. And I'm just going to do a rail. It's going to be one-on-one like that. And that's good. Okay, so I do need a fillet between the two. So I'm just going to, well, let's get rid of this one. And I am going to extend this COS over here because that's where the fillet is. And I'm also going to extend this back over here like this. And let's create a fillet between the two. So I'm just going to grab a surface fillet. Variable fillet will need to be turned off. Let's try 200. I would say a little bit bigger wouldn't be bad either. So maybe 250. Actually, let's go 300 like this. Update. Okay, so that looks good. Edge align on both sides. I think that's pretty good there. Now, that said, however, I do need a transition over here. So how do you create this transition over here? So here's what I'm going to do. I actually need to trim this surface out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to extend this one over here like that. And I'm just going to create a surface over here. Probably Z was probably good. And let's just take the canvas image like that. And I believe this was just based on this one. So let's project this edge over here as well from the side. Now it should be level. I think it is. So let's go ahead and trim that back. I don't need this one anymore. So let's get rid of that. And I'm going to go here and I'm just going to say discard like this. And that's good. And now what I'm going to do is, now if I were to just extend this, you'll see that it's actually going to float. Actually, it's going to float above the surface like that. So what I need is, I actually need a surface that is curvature to here and here. So that's why I'm going to just create a rail. So it's going to be 1-on-1 like this. Gen 1 needs to be curvature, rail 1 needs to be curvature, and you just want to make sure that the CV structure is not too bad. It looks pretty good, and that's it. So that'll create a nice washout between this one and this one. So now what you need to do is you just need to make sure that this is all covered. So I'm just going to grab a curve like this, snap it over here, and go to a rear view, give it a little bit of angle like this. And let's just fill that in. So for this one, I think just parallel sweep mode is probably better. And yeah, I'm just going to go over here like this and just use the trimmed edge to build a surface like that. Now, of course, I'm not quite sure what's going on actually in the inside. So I'm just going to leave it like that and just call it done. Okay, let's just do a little bit of rebuild. Probably just align, position, blending, position influence set to max, 5 degrees, spans, oh, there we go. And XRC reserve 2, blend factor of 0 so that everything moves in unison. Do the same thing over here. Let's just reduce the spans as much as I can. Looks like 2 spans is needed. Now you can just leave it like that, or you can also reduce it back to 0 and just intersect between the re-intersect these surfaces. But for this one, I think I'm just going to leave it like that. And you can always put a fillet here and do all of those nice refinements. But essentially, this is how you build the Maserati MC20 Bodyside. So let me just get rid of the curves, so it's a little bit easier to look. And I think the transition looks pretty good. Nice highlight. And you got a nice fade into the intake over here. And that's how you build it. All right. And that's how you make the body side of the Maserati MC20. Thank you guys for watching and see you next time.